Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I don't very often have this many guests on, but one of the things that really inspired me this week when we did our first episode of Caring Stories, where we talked to frontline caregivers, was that we actually spend not enough time talking to residents and their families. That is what we are going to talk about. But first, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. So I'm going to set the stage here, and then I'm going to have each of you introduce yourself. We've got two people who are residents in senior living. I think I'm one of the things that makes senior living Foresight very unusual, as we have two people who are part of our team, Fara McLaughlin and Jack Cumming, who are residents in senior living community. Jack's been doing the resident thing for quite a while, and Fara's pretty new at it. And then we've got Scott Eckstein, who is with Boston University. He's running the senior living program, graduate senior living program there. And his father, is that right? Your father is in senior living. And so this should be a fascinating question. I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds, 20 seconds to just kind of introduce yourself. And Jack, we'll start with you.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Jack Cumming, and I've lived in a CCRC for nearly 16 years now. So I guess that does make me a bit of a veteran. I should tell you that this is a virtual background. That's not what the apartments here look like, but I don't think you would want to see my messy apartment. By background, I was educated in history, went to graduate school in history, undergraduate history, but to earn a living, I became an actuary. You just take these exams and you can prove your mastery and you become an actuary. And living in senior living is really a kind of better living. It's a carefree living because all of the daily tasks that you usually associate with the hassles of living are largely taken care of in one very large entrance fee and a very large monthly fee. But it's large because it's so comprehensive. So
great. And so, Jack, I want to actually just expand on that a second. I should have set the stage. So why did you originally move into senior living?
Well, that's quite a story because we have our family. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, and my father all dropped dead suddenly of heart attacks at age 72. And I didn't want my wife to be alone living in a big one-family house when that occurred. I wanted that to be a smooth transition for her so that it wouldn't be traumatic combined with having to make decisions about moving and all. And she agreed to go along with it. So when I was 70, we moved in, and I can happily affirm that I've outlived my expiry date, that family logic has not worked. I think that's pretty common for our generation. Thank you, blood pressure medicine, probably. And back to you, Steve.
Great, thank you. So, Scott, let's turn to you next. I'd actually like to have you talk a little bit about your story. I guess I'm sort of changing it up a little bit, but I think that you talk a little bit about what you do in the industry, and then take us through your journey, sort of the initial part of the story of your journey, and then we'll sort of get into some learning lessons.
Well, thanks, Steve. I have a very diverse and eclectic background. As you can see behind me and on my shirt, I teach at Boston University, create the graduate senior living concentration there. But my background, honestly, the beginning of my career was in real estate and finance, but then I quickly moved into senior living, and I was been in research in senior living. I've been in acquisitions and development in senior living. I've been in operations in senior living and senior technology. I've done some work in. And then I was teaching. I taught at Washington State University for many years. in their senior living program at the Granger Cobb Institute, and now with Boston University, where I'm the director of the senior living program and concentration there. And I'm also an adjunct professor, where I teach senior living, taught the senior living operations class. And one of my professors on my screen is above you, Fara McLaughlin, who teaches the resident journey class. And we had another class called the business of senior living. So,
great. And so you ended up effectively being a senior living consumer on behalf of your dad, right? And
yes.
and so my guess is, I'm going to ask this a little bit as a question, but my guess is that you probably thought when it came time to go find senior living for your dad, being an expert, it would be kind of a snap, right?
Well, yes. Well, yes and no. I knew the journeys and up and down, as I described it, Candyland, chutes and ladders kind of thing, and that's what I've experienced. As I sort of explained to the people, to be transparent, that I have, an understanding of the business, so I know how things are supposed to be or how I expect them to be. So I understand what's going on in the background as well as dealing with my father in the foreground. And I experienced all the unfortunate things you can experience. My dad's in his third community, which is horrible to say. And honestly, I started losing faith, Steve. I was getting very, very, very frustrated.
Yeah.
And it
So
all came down to
Scott, I'm actually going to stop you here for just a second. This is a story that I really want to dig into deep. It may be in some sense the most important story. And so, but I want to do a quick, I want to talk to Fara. You are the newest resident in senior living. I'd like to have you talk a little bit about why did you, I mean, you're still working, right? Why'd you move in senior living?
I am still working. Thank you, Steve. And I work with you. So I'm so honored to work with you. Some of our viewers may know me. I've spent the last 20 years in senior living, and the first 13 in operations, sales, marketing, and operational leadership for, as Scott mentioned, startups, turnarounds, publicly traded and private companies. But I had an acute medical issue that you were so gracious to share, because I not heard anyone else like me. And that happened last year, where I needed assisted living. Luckily, I was treated well, and I recovered from my medical issues. But it was a moment, and pivotal moment, like Jack said, as a couple and in my marriage. I knew that it wasn't going to be if, it was going to be when we needed additional support. And I didn't want my partner, my husband, to be left sort of holding that bag of all the life responsibilities of our home, cooking, housekeeping. And in my recovery, I also said, I want to focus on work. I want to focus on my education as I complete a master's in aging innovation, as I support Boston University. But you can see behind me, I actually am showing you my resident apartment. I'm here at Revel Legacy. And we made a choice to, as a freshman resident, to go into fully independent living. And what I'm loving today, as many operators may be watching, is that power in an unlicensed community to allow me the choice to bring in care when and if I need it. So this whole concept of aging in place, that's taking place for 9 out of 10 people living in their homes alone, that gets to happen here. But we have the long bar and the dining and the housekeeping and the activities. So I am so delighted that my husband's out of the apartment doing Tai Chi and then headed to lunch, while I can work and have a conversation today.
That's terrific. And it's interesting to me that you and Jack have sort of made the decision for as much for your spouse as is for yourselves. And I just really, really like that. So I want to actually bring sort of Scott back on, and I really want to dig in, Scott, with you a little bit about your journey. Maybe you can share, to the extent you're comfortable, you'd share kind of what precipitated your dad needing senior living, and let's just walk through that journey.
Sure. Well, it's funny thing is, we were actually still in the semester. So between January and April, my dad was doing fine. Besides things that happened during the pandemic, he did a lot of volunteering and was hoping to get back to that. And I remember going down to Florida from Boston, and he picked me up at the airport, and we went and had lunch. We met my sister, and things were fine. And he wanted to show me a place he was wanted to possibly move to. So everything seemed good. But I noticed him slowing down a bit, and then probably, I don't know, maybe a month later, I get a call that he's in the hospital. Turns out he had congestive heart failure and AFib and a bunch of things. So things went south pretty darn quickly. And he was living in his house. He had a friend living with him, but things kept on going wrong, and he kept falling, and it just ended up being a nightmare. So I talked to my sister. We started with some caregivers at the house, but that was getting a little, honestly, it was getting expensive, and it was very difficult to manage. So I said, maybe it's time for us to look at assisted living, or maybe even independent living with some additional support, but at least people would be around. So we made the move to the first place. Now, I won't mention the names of the companies or the communities. But the first one, very nice building. Physically, it was beautiful. But they, we have staffing issues in this industry, as we all know, we're all aware of. And it was very, very apparent. But it was apparent to the point where my dad wasn't getting the care he needed. He wasn't getting the responses he needed. I was on the phone constantly with the community trying to, where is the assistance for my dad? They didn't manage his medication properly. So I said, I'm not going to wait for you guys to figure out your problems. We're going to move my dad out. So we did, which is very difficult for me because I wanted to be able to give them a chance. But honestly, I didn't want them doing it on my dime and on my dad's, health. So we moved to another place.
I want to ask you one question. How did you pick that first community originally? Can you talk a little bit about the decision thinking?
Yeah, well, sure. Well, I did some online research. My dad lives in Florida, and my sister lives right near him. And I obviously know most of the companies in the industry. So I said, well, look at these companies and let's start there. And you go visit them. And since my sister was going to be the one that was primarily dealing with things logistically, I said, I want you to be comfortable as much as I want dad to be comfortable. So go and check these places out. And if you're comfortable, we'll move forward. I wasn't able to get out to Florida to do the tours myself, but I did have some phone interviews with some of the executive directors and marketing folks. So that was how it happened. And the same thing happened with the second one, what we ended up moving to. It was one that my sister, I think, really wanted in the first place. But for some reason she chose this other one. So I said, fine, I never heard of that company, but I'll talk to them. And it was very pretty, and my sister liked that fact. So we ended up going there. And honestly, I had some hesitation. Well, my sister felt very strongly about it, so we moved forward. And honestly, my concerns panned out. Steve, all these issues ended up being related to the health director. The first executive director was fantastic, but the health director was not. And the second time, the executive director was, I don't want to be mean about it, but he was new, he was green. So, I had to give him a chance to learn his job, and I get that, and I'm all for that. But the issues were, ultimately, Steve, that place didn't give my dad half his medications, and we didn't find out until it was too late. No follow up. It was a whole mess. And again, I don't want to get into the details of it, but he ended up in the hospital. I said he's not going back there. So we tried the third place, and honestly, the third place is working out well, as we all know, and there's at least a 3 to 6 week window where it takes to get, things. And we're still in that 3 to 6 week window, but things are going relatively well. He's getting his medication. He's getting his physical therapy. The caregivers are coming in consistently. They have staffing issues too. So, being understanding of that and explaining it to my dad and explaining it to my sister, and we're trying to work with them on that. But all in all, they're doing a pretty darn good job. And my dad's starting to get used to the fact that he's living there. Obviously, he would prefer to live in his house, but logistically and physically, it doesn't make any sense for that. There's too much room for error in his house. It's too far away from my sister. Somebody needs to be able to get there. I said they can move him to me in California, but they don't seem to want to get the airplane and come to California. Sometimes I can't blame him, but he's doing pretty well all in all. But it's constant communication, it's constant advocacy. They know me pretty well there. I've been there a couple times physically, and I've been on the phone with them almost weekly, but not in a challenging sort of way, just sort of trying to get things moving in the right direction, everybody rowing in the right direction.
Yeah. So I guess the thing that I really sort of, I mean, I'm glad that, first off, I'm going to say I'm glad that it's better in this third community, but I guess I find it frustrating, disturbing, something that you feel like you need to have, that things are only going as, it sounds like what I'm hearing is it's going okay, not spectacularly well. And what I think I'm reading in what you're saying is that you feel like it would go less well if you weren't being that proactive about it. And that it seems like it should be better than that.
It should be better than that, Steve. And it needs to be better than that. That's what it needs to be. It should be on an autopilot, for lack of a better description, but it's not. And a lot of it has to do with training. A lot of it has to do with management training, mentorship, leadership training. It has to do with all these things. And honestly, through the pandemic, we lost a lot of really good people in the industry who have left, a lot of phenomenal caregivers, a lot of managers. There's a lot of retirement going on in the senior living community. We're going to run out of CEOs, if that even, you can even imagine that. There's a lot of there's a talent vacuum that we need to fill. And it's one of the reasons I ended up going back into teaching, is because I see it. I have students of mine even from Washington State, as far back as that, that went into the industry and left the industry because they didn't like the way they were treated. Their management training program wasn't what they were told. They didn't have good mentors. We have an issue we have to address. It's one of the reasons one of my soapboxes at Washington State was management training programs, and my second soapbox, so I'm a little taller now, is mentorship programs. So I got my management training program, then I got my mentorship one on top of it, because it's so critical. Just because somebody is an executive director doesn't mean they're a good mentor. Just because somebody's got a building, a mentee is not just to be a plug stuck in the building because you need an extra staff person. Somebody has to want to mentor somebody. Somebody has to understand the importance of mentoring, and of management training and the reason for it. We have to build a cadre of leaders and managers who are going to take us to the next level. Right now, I was losing faith, Steve. Going through those times when I'm sitting in my dad's hospital room because of what happened in an assisted living community, you start to lose faith. But then, I go to teach at BU, and I talk to Fara, and we're talking to the students, and I find hope. But it's concerning. It's very concerning.
Yeah, I just think that I think that this. I'm so tempted. You've got me where I want to go off in a completely different direction now, but I'm not going to do that. I want to stay on the resident experience. I think that this is so critical, Scott. I'm going to sort of give a tease for stuff that we're going to bring everybody. That we'll talk about this in the future, but I look at the executive director problem, and it's sort of in Jack. I think you and Fara both have something to say, and then I'm going to come back and I want to ask you about your best days in senior living.
I do have something to say.
In just a minute. So I'm going to tease you with that, but I think that one of the things that we know is that when they're great performing buildings, they always have a great executive director, and that when they're poor performing buildings, they always have a poor to mediocre executive director. And sometimes some of that's, I think the great executive directors today are mostly intuitive, because I don't think they're getting great training, but I think it's possible to take a lot of just mediocre executive directors who really want to be good and turn them into great executive directors with the things you've been talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of warm bodies being put in places, and almost out of necessity. I remember when I was at Sunrise, and Fara may recall this, it was very important that the executive director, the health services coordinator or director, and the sales and marketing director were in tune, and his triumvirate worked really well. Because you have to have all those three parts for a community to run well. And we do. We have a vacuum of all those positions, whether it's because people left the industry or our training programs aren't strong enough, or and I'm not saying it's everybody. I had very specific experiences, so I'm speaking to that. I don't want to say that's the case for every single senior living community, because there's some amazing communities. They just don't happen to be in the part of Florida that my dad is in. So that was the problem. It's a logistical issue, but there are some amazing communities, and I see them every day, and I talk to the executives at these companies all the time, and that's what gives me hope, because there's a lot of phenomenal operators out there, and a lot of phenomenal executive directors and nurses and marketing directors and caregivers. So I don't want it to sound too negative, but my experiences recently were negative, but honestly, they are getting better now. The fact that, Farah and I created a class at BU about the resident experience. I'm very sensitive about the resident experience and my dad's experience and my sister's experience as adult caregivers. So when that doesn't go the right way, it gets my attention.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I hear those stories a lot. Jack?
I think this is just a wonderful time to be in this industry, because the conversation that we're having now shows both the importance, excuse me, and the potential of this industry. And we need to get it right, because we need to convey to the public that this is an industry that is predictable and trustworthy. And I think we have this very narrow focus, not only on executive directors, but on the executive management of these enterprises, which are all well-intentioned, but can we provide them the support and the background so that they're assured that they will be as successful as they all really want to be? I think this is an exciting time, and saying that we need change and we need improvement is not criticizing. It is not something that people need to be pushed back against. It's something that if we can listen to each other, we can give America the industry to support its aging population that our country needs, and that it's going to need not only now, but in 2040, when there are going to be more people needing care, fewer people able to give care. We have to open this up, rethink the whole thing imaginatively, and make sure that nobody ever lands in the hospital because of a medication mistake or whatever. And I think we can do it if we only come together and do it together.
Jack, you are 100% right. I just want to, I want to say thanks to Amnesty. I want to run this quick little promotion. They're making this show possible. And I got to get it right. It's Amity, no N in there. I'll get my hand slapped on that afterwards. So Jack, I want to come back to you. I want to ask you, tell me about your best day ever since you moved into senior living.
Wow, my best day ever. Wow, that's a wonderful thing. Maybe it was the day I realized that I wasn't getting utility bills and I didn't have to worry about those things. And if something needed repair, I could simply put in a work order. So that's a wonderful day. But I think it's probably been the days when I see Valerie going out and finding her connections and her true self, because she is not a naturally gregarious person. She's content. She's very with a solitary life, so she would be happy to stand and just say free set, place free cell. But now she's involved in so many things, and that's so important for a healthy aging experience. She's found purpose by living here. I think when we give purpose and enrich people's lives, we're at our best.
Absolutely.
And Fara, same question for you.
It's almost every single day. I've been so delighted and surprised, Steve. And it's really based upon the fact that my partnership in my marriage, I wanted and knew that senior living at a variety of different companies and the why would be great because of the amenities. But my husband has opened up, it's enhanced our marriage in a way where we can come together in the evening. And in our lifestyle before with a golf course community, he was in the yard 5 hours a day. And we really didn't have a lot to talk about. Now he goes to and engages in his own social activities. We come together for a happy hour, music, dinner. We've immediately made friends. And I'm gaining so much from this opening of my own peer group. The residents are 60 to 90 here. And I love that because I'm actually living that example of breaking ages and stereotypes. So I can tell you unequivocally every single day I wake up here and it's like being able to exhale. This was the right decision.
So we're just about out of time here, but I've got one question I want to ask the three of you, and that is this. If you had a brand new executive director who was going to be leading, in Fara and Jack's case, your community, somebody was coming in brand new, and Jack, in your father's community, and they came to you and they said, okay, you are an expert, and I want to be a super duper leader of this property, this community. Give me some advice. What would that advice be? And I'm gonna. Anybody want to volunteer to go first? Fara, you go first, and we'll go to Scott, and Jack will give you the last word.
I mean, I hope I speak for both Scott and I were really baptized in a sunrise approach, and I give a lot of credit to the founders. So there's a key behavior that executive directors can actually shortcut from A to Z. If they choose to come into the dining room every day for at least one meal, I promise you that in itself, that behavior from an executive position will create such trust, a level of communication, and it makes a huge difference.
Perfect. I love that. Scott?
I will concur with Fara because my comment was going to be, don't spend a lot of time in your office. Be out in the dining room, be in the community, be in the common areas, walk the halls, talk to the residents. If you can do that, and you do that, you will have your finger on the pulse of what's going on and know what you need. And honestly, the emails that you're getting while you're out will become less and less and less. I think that's the key. Is you're the leader. You got to keep everybody rowing in the same direction. The staff and the residents need to see that you're involved and not locked up in your office. I think that is the key. It's the executive director that's sitting in his or her office all day is where you probably find a community with problems.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, as we look at organizations, we are a lot more forgiving of people we know than people we don't know. I was driving to church a few weeks ago, and there was this guy in the left-hand lane, and he was going slow in the left-hand lane where he shouldn't have been, and I was so frustrated with him, and I finally was able to get around him. And I looked over there and I realized it was a fellow church member that I know that was road bouldering. And all of a sudden I had a completely different attitude towards him. And so I think that none of us are perfect. No leader is perfect, but when you have relationships with the people you're leading, and if you're an executive director or a regional or a CEO, you're really leading two groups of people, really three groups of people, right? You're leading your routine, which is obvious, you're leading your residents, and you're really leading those family members. So, Jack, how about you?
Well, this is very real for us because we have a wonderful new executive director. She's only been here a short time. Her name is Paula Diggerness, and she's amazing. And she's very good at coming out and listening to people and not feeling that her job is to be the boss, but to be the enabler, the person who empowers people to find their best potential. And Steve, you mentioned there are three groups. I mean, you forget that there's the corporate group that the executive director also has to manage, and that can be the most difficult. That's something that we can fix in the industry so that the primacy of this executive director role is fully recognized, and we allow those people to really be their best. I think that if we do that, then this industry will shine and thrive for many years to come.
Yeah. Jack, Scott, Fara, thank you. This has been amazing. I guess what I love about it is that what Hillary Clinton used the term loyal opposition, and I don't know that opposition is quite the right word here, but you three are all obviously huge fans of the industry, and I can see how it hurts your heart when it isn't as good as it should be, and that you at the same time only want the very best for the industry, because this is all about making the lives of people better. It's about making the lives of residents better. It's about making the lives of team members better. It's about making family members better. And Jack, you make a really, really good point that it's even about making the lives of the C-suite and the regionals better. And so with that, we are out. I hope you all have a great, great weekend. Go out and change a life today in your communities and in your organization.